Hey guys, welcome to Terry Talks Fast. So, guys, I just wanted to do a quick little vlog on a topic. I did something on my podcast. The first one I've done about something of interest to me. This one was in a catastrophic event that happened in Indonesia. This is something that I was reading in a book and it just interested me, so I thought I would do a little podcast on it, and now I'm doing a little follow-up video for you guys. So what I'm going to talk about today, guys, is the volcano that erupted in 1883. It was called Krakatoa. Now Krakatoa, I just did a little research on Google. I'm just going to throw at you what I know, guys, and maybe it'll excite you to learn more about it and go look things up. All these figures and stuff are off the top of my head, so it's just stuff that I researched. So Krakatoa is in Indonesia. Indonesia is an archipelago nation, kind of like the Philippines here, which is just a collection of many little islands. I thought the Philippines was big because the Philippines has 7,000 islands. The province, there's like 7 or so provinces, main provincial islands, but there's like 7,000 islands. I found out that Indonesia has like 17,000 islands, so that's a lot of islands. 17,000, and like 7,000 of those are uninhabited, so it's just a huge place. Something else that I discovered about Indonesia, guys, which is really funny and cool, something that I love, as you guys know, is coffee. We all love coffee. So when I list these islands, tell me what comes to mind. Java, Sumatra, that's Indonesia. So those are the two largest islands in Indonesia, are Java and Sumatra. So I was like, how does those are coffees, you know? Java was the other name for coffee. Give me a cup of Java. Or Sumatra I just had some Sumatra today. It's a really good blend of coffee, type of coffee from Indonesia. So if you ever wonder like how that came about, like where did that come from? So what I found, guys, was that back when Indonesia was under the rule of the Dutch Netherlands, there was a company called the Dutch East Indies Trading Company, and you've probably heard of that company because it comes into play, I think, with our own history of the United States and the New World and stuff, the Dutch East Indies Trading Company. So at this point in the story, they were very small. The Dutch East India Company wasn't very big, but it grew to be enormous at some point. But at this point, they were just a small entity, guys. So they wanted to get into the coffee industry, which was pretty much a monopoly at that point. And the Ottomans were the one controlling this empire of coffee in Arabia. So the Ottomans were really smart. They knew that they had something, so then they in effect made their own patent on it, and that they kept it under lock and key. And when they would distribute the coffee, they controlled all the, just kind of like Red Bull, they controlled the manufacturing, the distribution, and everything of the coffee. And even the coffee that was already used, the grounds, the beans and stuff, they would destroy them, make them sterile, so people couldn't plant them. So they really wanted to control this market. But the Dutch smuggled coffee seeds out of Yemen. They smuggled coffee seeds out of Yemen and they planted coffee in Southeast Asia. I think they tried to plant it in like Sri Lanka and some other places, and they ended up bringing it to Indonesia, to the island of Java. Java was home to what is modern day Jakarta, the city of Jakarta. Back then it was called Batavia. And so Java, with this island of Java, was ruled by the Dutch. And the other island next door was Sumatra. So they started growing coffee in what is now modern day Jakarta, in Batavia, in the island of Java, and then the island of Sumatra. So the locals who would usually grow rice were growing coffee beans and sugarcane and stuff like that. So guys, these two islands of Sumatra and Java are the largest islands in Indonesia. 150 million people in Indonesia live on Java. That number blew me away. 150 million people live on Java, making it the most populated island in the world. So Borneo is a massive island as well. It's actually like the third largest island in the world. Borneo is. It's the largest island in Asia. I believe it's not listed as the largest island in Indonesia because Borneo actually is split up into three different countries. Lay claim to it, including Malaysia, Brunei, and like over 75% is Indonesia. But Indonesia has 130 active volcanoes. It has the most active volcanoes of any country in the world. Now, speaking of Krakatoa, so where's Krakatoa? So we have Java and you have Sumatra, these two big islands, and in between them there's this strait. It's a body of water kind of like a canal, except the canal is man-made. A strait is like a naturally occurring body of water that's in between two larger bodies of water. In this case, it would be the Indian Ocean and the Java Sea. The Strait of the Sundan Strait, S-U-N-D-A-N, Sundan Strait. In the Sundan Strait, there's a little smattering of islands, another smaller archipelago called the Krakatoa Archipelago. It consists of 3 islands. It consisted of 3 islands at the time of this tragedy. So these 3 islands are kind of like equidistant from each other. So if you triangulated them, they would form like they're equidistant from each other. If you draw a circle or a triangle, they're just kind of like 3 islands sitting equidistant from each other. So guys, for centuries, the people in Indonesia and Java at the time, they had no sense of danger or anything from these volcanoes. There's these old etchings and paintings of this beautiful setting of these ships with this volcano in the background spewing like pumice and stuff and ash in the background. It was just this volcano that was part of the scenery. It never really posed a threat. Now there was an account of a man who was a Dutch man who was a miner in Sumatra, and one time he was on a ship going from Sumatra to Java or vice versa, and he wrote in his he documented that he looked out into Krakatoa, and he said that what was usually a lush, vegetative, beautiful island was gray, like scorched. There was flames coming out of it. This was in like 1679 or something like that. So we do have that document, but there was never any record of any type of catastrophe there, or death or tsunami or anything. So that happened somewhere along the line, and then by 160 years later or so, in 1830. The British, I believe, went ashore on an expedition, and they recorded just the opposite, that the island was vegetative, lush, green, beautiful, paradise, coral, all kinds of things like that. So by that time, the island had totally bounced back from when this Dutch man recorded that it was scorched and it had been hit by a volcano. But guys, apart from that, we have no history. We have nothing that says that it was a danger, it was a risk, anything really happened, anybody died. So guys, fast forward to the year 1883. This is when Krakatoa erupts. So in May of 1883, Krakatoa starts to smoke. There's rumblings, there's shaking, weird things start to happen. Now the people aren't put on alert as far as anything's there's no danger. At this point, it's 1883, there was no high-tech equipment, telling them, measuring things necessarily. However, there was something very interesting at the time, because of all the barometers and things like that. This was during the Victorian age, so every gentleman's club had like a barometer, so they were measuring. There was tons after the accident, there was tons of readings all over the world that caught this strange waves. And also the transoceanic telegraph cables were running the news back and forth between continents. So this was the first event of its type that was made, that there was a global awareness of a big tragedy. That was something unique about this accident, that it was on a global scale. Everybody knew about it, and people were actually able to photograph it. People were able to witness it from ships, from on land. People saw it in many different angles. They made drawings of it, they made paintings of it, they had pictures of it, they took graphs of it, things like that. So it was widely known. It kind of went viral, you could say, back in 1883. On the morning of May 10th in 1838, there was a lighthouse called First Point, and there was a lighthouse keeper there up in the lighthouse watching the Sundan Strait, and something very eerie happened. He felt the lighthouse kind of like shift on its foundation, and then he looked out at the ocean, and the ocean kind of swelled like to white foam, and then it went completely glass, like it went completely still. Like if you see a depth charge that's getting ready to explode and the water goes still for a second, it did that. It went completely still, something he had never seen. Very weird. And so he recorded that in his journal or whatever and sent it off to, I guess it would have been Batavia or whatever, which is modern day Jakarta. Put it in his report, but nothing ever happened. Now this happened again, actually. This was in May. This happened again, like in the weeks that followed or something. So it happened like twice. So he logged it. But apart from that, there was a lot of things, like there was rumblings, there was things, happening, but everything got really still, actually. Everything got super still for a while. So there was no inclination like anything was going to happen. So fast forward, guys, to the day of the eruption, which would have been August 27th. I think it started on the 26th, and then August 27th was when it really happened. So August 27th, there was 4 explosions. The 4th explosion was like historical. The 4th explosion was the loudest event ever recorded in history. How loud it was, I think it was nearly 200 decibels. The equivalent of 200 megatons of TNT was the measurement of that explosion. To give you an idea, the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima was like measured in kilotons. It was like 13,000 times more power than the atomic bomb. 13,000. The largest nuclear bomb ever recorded in history, a hydrogen bomb that the Russians made called the TSAR, was 50 megatons. This is 200 megatons. So when you see that mushroom cloud, it's like a nuclear bomb. It was more power than the world had ever witnessed at that time. So guys, this caldera is what they call it, the volcano under the water. It's where a cone has kind of like imploded, like a sinkhole. So all the magma and everything has released, and it's like a sinkhole. It's like a caldera under the water, so everything's happening. Anyways, when that thing blows open, when that thing exploded, it threw debris, it threw volcanic material like 50 miles into the air, like 250,000 feet high. It ended up all over the world. There was barometers and things capturing the waves from the sound waves and the waves of the explosion for like 3 days, back and forth. It was reverberating. It went around the world like 3 times. So this was massive. So it threw so much material into the air, guys, that it was like between 6 and 10 cubic miles of material. So to give you an idea, like a semi truck of like volcanic rock and pumice. Pumice is like the volcanic rock that comes out of an explosion. It can be pellet size or it can be the size of like your fist. If you take that and measure that in a semi-load, that's 18 cubic yards. This was like 6 to 10 cubic miles. That's enough volcanic rock and ash and stuff, volcanic material, to cover Manhattan in 200 feet of debris. That's how much that is. That was just spit into the air. So guys, the statistics on this thing are just huge. So this thing explodes 3 times, or 4 times. 3 times there was three tsunamis. It sparked 3 tsunamis. So I think the mistake that the people made is they thought they were far enough away, like they wouldn't get hit. Now there's something I discovered, it's called pyroclastic flow. That's a real dangerous part of volcano. That didn't come into effect here. There's another volcano called Pelee. I think it's called P-L-E-E-E, 2 E's. Pelee I think it's in the Caribbean, French Caribbean or something. This whole town in 1903 was demolished in 3 minutes by pyroclastic flow. It's like that billowing gray cloud that comes down, and inside the cloud there's like orange hot embers inside the cloud. That came down on another place and wiped out the whole town, and 30,000 people in 3 minutes, except for 1 man, which is a pretty amazing story. I should tell it here sometime. 1 man was survived. It was like a biblical plague. People thought it was the wrath of God. Guys, that pyroclastic flow here and the ash and everything didn't really. It would have hit people immediately near the island, but the island was uninhabited, so it might have hit. Well, there's record of sailors 15 and 20 miles away getting hit with softball-sized pumice, volcanic stone, getting rained down on them. But that wasn't the real damage that was caused. It was the tsunamis that ensued. So these 3 tsunamis hit, guys, 100 to 120 foot walls of water come in, and I don't know how fast they're moving, but they come in really fast. They're coming in. So to give you an example, that pyroclastic flow I was talking about can move at like 500 feet per second. So this thing is moving. Anyways, the tsunami is coming down. It's destroying. It destroyed like 1,600 villages, damaged like 130 villages, killed 36,400 odd people. Ships at sea destroyed. Ships run into that were seen it up in riverbeds, miles down riverbeds. Just catastrophic event, guys. So they were saying that in Eastern Africa, like a year later after this happened, there was pumice rafts, like molten stone rafts, that were showing up on the shores in East Africa with skeletons on them. So this thing was just crazy. So guys, that's basically the gist of the volcano. But what happened is, so those 3 islands that I told you about, that formed the archipelago, when on that final 4th blast, the Krakatoa, whole island was obliterated. All but like 2/3 of it was obliterated, just gone. You can imagine this huge island with mountains, just gone. So what happens in the days that follow were, in the place where the other 2 peaks on Krakatoa, so Krakatoa and there's 2 other peaks on the island, those other 2 peaks disappeared, left 1 peak. I think it was called Rakata or Rataka or something like that, I can't remember. I'll write it down here. Anyways, that was all that remained. So fast forward to like 1930, somewhere in there, out of the water where had disappeared, that island, comes a single another island volcano comes out of the water, and it's like 1,200 at its peak. It was 1,200 feet high, a mile diameter. This comes out of nowhere. This was called Anak Krakatau. Anak means child or son. It's our word in Tagalog in Philippines, means son, child. So this is like the child of Krakatau. So this thing emerges, right? This is the one to be feared to this day. In 2018, this thing, part of it caved in into the ocean, a bunch of it. So it went from 1,200 feet down to like 300 feet, caused a tsunami, killed like 400 some people. This is 2018, after they have all their warning systems in place. This is like right near, it's on December 22nd, near Christmas. So guys, this thing is very much dangerous still. It's like still out there. If you Google it now, you'll hear stuff on the news now about not Krakatau. It's not done. And so that's the active part underneath there, is that caldera, the Krakatau caldera. So guys, like I said, why is this important? Because the magnitude of it and the power had been unparalleled, and people for the first time around the world could document it and have pictures, and people saw it and they could give first-hand accounts, like that lighthouse guy and everything, and it traveled around the world, and people were made aware globally of a tragic event, and that never really happened. So guys, anyways, hope you enjoyed that. That's a little bit about Krakatoa. I really enjoyed learning that. That's one thing I like about reading books, is all the things you'll find. Like this author that I said, Clive Pastor, he throws out a lot of history, a lot of geography, and I really enjoyed it. So I thought I'd share that with you guys. And thanks for watching. And if you want to listen to the podcast that I did, it's pretty random too. It's almost 40 minutes long, but that's over on you can find it on Spotify. It's under Terry Talks Fast, or just go to my Terry Talks Fast Facebook, and I have linked these things up there. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching.